As a community, we build empathy, curiosity, joy, and connection when we share stories with you. Welcome to Storytellers Project, part of the USA Today network.
The COVID-19 vaccines can be our chance to get back to our plans, to get back to each other, to life. But it's okay to have questions, like, how were the vaccines tested? In rigorous clinical trials among adults of diverse backgrounds. Find the latest information at getvaccineanswers.org.
Hi, my name is Megan Finnerty, and I am so appreciative that you are joining us. I'm the founder and director of the Storytellers Project, and I'm part of the USA Today network. And we deeply appreciate you sharing this time with us as we join Humana and 5 Americans from across the nation to create community. Since 2016, the Storytellers Project has brought more than 100 shows each year to communities across the nation. But you know, if you're a regular watcher, that last year we went online, and we remain online because it still feels unsafe to be together in big theaters, but it does feel necessary to be together online. So we've handpicked incredible, inspiring storytellers to bring you a show about growing up and all that entails. I want you to wave and say hi to our storytellers right off the top. So we're going to bring up Brittany Kay from Phoenix. Hi, Brittany. Thanks for being here. Encore Bora from Dallas. Hi. There, it's coming up. Okay, great. Charlie Kramer from Los Angeles. Hi, Charlie. Thanks for being here.
Hi.
John B. Johnson from Seattle, but soon Cleveland. Although he kind of started in Cleveland, that's part of the story. Awesome. And Kaden is here from Seattle. Hi, Kaden. Thank you so much for being with us. Is she popping up? There's Caden Wagner, awesome. And did we get Ankur, or did he drop off real quick? Hopefully he'll be with us soon. Okay, no big deal. He dropped off for just a second, but listen, it's live TV, things happen. Kendra, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I totally called you Caden, which is weird, and I apologize for that. This is a great start, everyone. Okay, stay with me. Thank you all, storytellers, for being with us. I'm sorry, Kendra, I'm sorry. I'm going to bring you down for just a second. Well, you know, growing up involves making mistakes and learning from them. So I really do apologize. Tonight's show is not a TED Talk. It's not Toastmasters. It's not a how-to, an inspirational speech, or a lecture. We instead invite you to listen to our storytellers with your full heart, because it's really based on visiting. You open your heart, you guys know how to do this, and just like pay attention to a person you care about or you're curious about. Some of these stories will be polished and professional. Some will be casual and conversational. We ask you to receive them all because that's how community connection really happens. We believe that creating empathy and understanding is vital at all times as a member of a major media company, but we believe it's especially necessary in times of uncertainty. Which brings me to this moment. The Storytellers Project, the show you're watching now, is designed to create empathy, to welcome strangers together in a shared, safe place. In fact, the whole point is that we believe when we share stories and listen to stories, we will learn about those around us, and we come to know them, not fear them. We come to value them, not dismiss them. And we come to know how they matter. And so with that, we welcome you to watch this show in light of what we know was a difficult day for many Americans, with a lot of news and a lot of heartache. In fact, it's been a long summer and a long last week. But we're hopeful that through listening to stories like these, and hopefully a lot of your own in your own life, that you will come to know people unlike yourself and value how they move through your community and perhaps your life. Another small note about tonight's stories. Some of tonight's stories will touch on difficult topics, including domestic violence and child abuse. The National Domestic Violence Hotline can be reached 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 1-800-799-SAFE or www.thehotline.org. And we'll put this contact information in our show, in the comments on wherever platform you're watching it on. If you're being hurt or know someone who is hurting, or you're maybe afraid that you might hurt another, you can also get help anywhere at childhelp.org/hotline. There are lots of ways to get resources. If you're not sure about any of it, you can also message us privately. And the Storytellers Project, as a major media organization, part of it, we will help connect you to resources to support you. So With that, I know it's a little bit of a heavy intro, but we also know that growing up can be hard and complicated. It can also be joyful. And really, with anything else, it's truly a way we can all connect. We're going to open our show tonight with Charlie from Los Angeles. He's going to get us started. Thank you so much for being with us. Charlie, the floor is yours.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Charlie. I live in Los Angeles, California. And if you look at me normally, you would think that I'm a completely sighted person, that I have nothing different about me. I look normal, right? But I'm actually legally blind. And saying legally blind actually makes it sound like I have a lot more vision than I actually do. I think the fair way to say it, and what I like to say, is that I'm blind. It's because I have a retinal eye disease, and it's called retinitis pigmentosa. But if you want to say something a little bit easier, you can just say RP. I was diagnosed with RP when I was 5 years old, and what it does, it causes me to lose my peripheral vision. So basically, I see like I'm looking through a tiny little straw, okay? And I can move my head or I can move my eyes to be able to see what's around me, but the window that I have is so small that I actually have to use a cane every single day of my life. Another part of my visual challenge is that I'm completely blind at night. So basically, what that means is that if you walk into a room as a normal person, you will have the ability for your eyes to adjust to that darkness. But for me, when I walk into a room, my eyes just stay there. They never get, I never get the opportunity to actually see what's going on. If there's a light in the room, of course I can see it, but it's actually really, really challenging. And I've grown up with this my entire life. And most people just don't really understand what I'm going through because I look so normal. And when I was younger, I even thought I was normal. It wasn't a situation of where I looked normal, I acted normal. I didn't use my cane until the age of 24. And I lived a really normal childhood, honestly. I grew up playing baseball. I grew up playing golf, every sport that you could possibly imagine. And I also grew up looking up to my mom and my sister. Of course, my dad too. But in this case, specifically my mom and my sister, because they both have RP as well. It's a dominant gene that runs in our family, and it's been in our family for generations. And growing up, I always thought that my vision was better than theirs. For some reason, I convinced myself that my vision was progressing at a slower rate than theirs was. And I even looked up to them and saw, well, my mom doesn't use a cane. My sister doesn't use a cane. My sister was even able to drive a car. For someone that is supposed to be blind, that is unbelievable. And the fact that she was able to do that blew my mind, and it got me excited. I was so ready. We had the Ford 1996 Windstar, gray, with the seats where you open the sliding door and you get the seats in there that are kind of like a nice little bench, right? I was so excited to have that car, to be able to just hang out with my friends, to move around. And at the age of 15, I started to learn how to drive. I remember my dad taking me around this little parking lot, and it was so fun. I loved it. I was pretty good at it, but it was a parking lot, you know. It was just, nothing else was coming at me from the sides or up and down. It was just straight ahead. But then I kind of got lazy, and I said, you know what? I'll get my permit a little bit later. I'm just not super excited about it right now. I'll wait. And I remember going to the doctors soon after that and having an extensive eye test, and it felt like to me just a normal eye test. Nothing was different. I didn't walk out of the doctor's office with some kind of new verdict. But I remember about 6 months later, I was 16, and I went up to my sister and I said, you know what? I've been so lazy. I'm finally ready. I'm going to get my permit. And I remember this day like it was yesterday. She looked at me and said, oh, Mom and Dad haven't told you yet. And my heart just went, like it just completely sunk. Because I thought I was going to be normal, you know. I was living my life as a normal person, thinking that I was going to be able to drive a car. And my parents are the most amazing people in the world. They didn't hide this from me because they were afraid of telling me. They just wanted me to learn when I was ready. And at that point, I was ready. And it was really challenging for me because it's set in stone that not only was I not able to drive, but I was legally blind at the age of 15. And just as a little bit of understanding, There's statistics out there that say most people who have my condition, and my mom and my sister, they go legally blind at the age of 40. And I was 15 years old. And I thought I was invincible. I thought I was going to play Major League Baseball, you know? And I thought I was going to drive a car. But from that point of learning that I was legally blind up until 24, nothing changed for me. I continued to live my life as if I was sighted. I just went about my everyday life bumping into poles, concussions, running into people. And I'll tell you right now, when you're in high school and you run into a big football player walking down the hall at full pace and they don't see that you have a blind cane, they think you are ridiculous. And I got pushed and told, watch where you're going. What are you doing? But when I started using my cane, everything shifted for me. I remember I went on a trip with my ex-girlfriend to San Francisco to visit my sister. And one of the nice things that this person did for me is they told me that there was nothing wrong with just being who I am and just showing up and using my cane because it's something that I actually need. I need it. It's not like something I can live without. I hurt myself. I hurt other people. I need to use my cane. And with a lot of challenge, and honestly, it's still, every time I pick up my cane, it is still a challenge for me because I still have somewhere deep inside my brain telling me that I'm that normal kid who was going to drive that car. But luckily, I've come around a little bit and I even have a little bit of fun with it. Okay. Not only is using a cane something that helps me, but I try and make it awesome. Pink's my favorite color. This is my pink blind cane. This is my everyday blind cane. You can change the handles. And in America, you can use different colors, which is pretty amazing. And the craziest thing to me of all of this is what I was truly blind to for the longest time was the fact that I'm blind. That was it. I was just hiding from my reality. And when I finally took ownership of who I am and owned the truth of my story, everything in my life shifted for me. And now I integrate my vision into everything I do. As you can see, I'm a musician, and I lead a program of blindfolded singing called Singing in the Dark. And for me, it's changed my life. But here's the most important thing and the coolest thing for me is being able to be an advocate for my mom now. When I was younger, my mom used to use this cane. She called it her ID cane because it would identify for people that someone blind was coming through. But she didn't use it tapping or sliding or anything like that. Not for herself. She was for other people. And I kept convincing her, Mom, you got to use a cane. You got to use a cane. And now there's so much joy for me walking down the street next to my mom, two people, independent, on their own, swiping their canes from right to left so that they know where they're going. And that feeling of being together with my family and doing what's needed to stand up for ourselves has absolutely changed my life. And although I want it to be normal, I'm so happy to be blind and to be exactly who I am, to be Charlie. Thank you for hearing my story.
Charlie, thank you so much for opening the show and giving us like so much thoughtfulness, so many great jokes, but also like the moral of every great growing up story is in so many ways like coming to know ourselves. And thank you so much for sharing that insight.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Also, thank you for your music. Charlie talked a little bit about his performances. If you want to learn more about him, we brought him back up. But if you want to learn more about Charlie, he was very cool. He did not plug himself, but we have stuff in the chat about how to learn more about Charlie, his shows, and his performances. So, thank you for telling your story, Charlie.
Thank you.
Well, now it's our time when we want to thank Humana. They have stuck with us during the pandemic. You guys know that they used to sponsor the shows in the outside times, and they have stayed with us in all of 2021, or in 2020, and now in 2021. And we're thankful to them because they believe that sharing stories connects us as humans, online and in person, and that connection makes us healthier as people, healthier as communities. They really mean it too. Like, they've invested in this project, they believe that we need these connections because that's how we can feel stronger and make better choices for ourselves and the people around us. And one of those choices is they are saying, as the vaccines become available in your community across the country, Humana strongly encourages you to get the vaccine, frankly, straight up. They also encourage you to discuss with your doctor what's best for your health. But those PSAs, you saw one at the top of the show, there's one later today. Those come courtesy of Humana and the Ad Council. And so we appreciate their stewardship of this message. If you want to learn more what Humana is doing and how they want to do every day to connect you to better health and to your community, you can visit them at humana.com. Thank you so much for your support, Humana. And thank you guys for listening to our little message. Our next storyteller, I want to say this tiny note in front of her story. On a day in which many of us are reflecting on George Floyd's life and his death, this next story is about race in America, and it feels especially poignant right now. And we really appreciate Kendra, for sharing this story today. Kendra, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Boy, and I know people who were part of this childhood story who are watching today, so thank you, including my sister. So my first diary was a little tiny pink one with a Barbie doll size lock and key. And my mom bought it when I was 7 and sat on my bed every night and asked me about my day, and then filled in these 4 narrow gold lines. So eventually, about a year later, I said, I want to do that now. And I took the pen and the diary, and I never let her see another entry. 63 diaries later, and a lot of Snoopy boyfriends, and some damp basements, and some shelving that was made of cinder blocks, and some that's made of rosewood. They're still with me. And the summer before I was in 3rd grade, I filled that diary with so much nervousness and excitement about the new kids, Black kids they were called, coming to our school. I overheard my parents talk about this thing called desegregation and how my school was part of an experiment. I had no idea what civil rights were or civil unrest or even the Civil War. But I heard them talking about all these things, my parents and their professor friends, late at night with vodka ice cube drinks clinking together. They raised their voices about this man named King and debated all these issues of the day. I used to imagine him in my mind as a king wearing robes. He wasn't known as Martin Luther King back then, or MLK even, just King. I finally saw him on TV, and my parents didn't let us watch much TV. And he was wearing suits, not robes. And I knew he was doing something good for Black people. But at school, they never mentioned him. Diary entry, June 15th, 1967. Tomorrow is the last day of 2nd grade. We had an assembly, and the principal went on and on about equality and being kind and welcoming to the new kids coming to school in September. I didn't understand a lot of it, except that they were coming on buses. Every morning, I would eat my cream of wheat. I still don't like cream of wheat or breakfast. Listen for the bell across the street that meant school was just about to start. It took me exactly 10 minutes to run over. Mostly I loved school, but I couldn't wait to get there most days, even in snowstorms. But sometimes math was hard. We would sit under the eaves at the side of school, shivering in the snow, and I would put my mittens under my arms because that's how cold it was in the Windy City. A few kids sat in their cars with impatient parents, but most of us just walked. No one came by bus. So in the summer, I was worried. How am I going to welcome them? And what does it look like to be kind and welcoming, like the principal said? What I started noticing and remembering is in the library, there weren't many books about kids with Black skin. Only in the encyclopedia there were some about Africa. And I didn't start to notice this until the year the Black kids came. We just heard stories from our librarian about kids with problems like freckles and friendship. Diary entry, August 17th, 1967. Mom says I will make new friends, but I can't invite them over because the Black kids take the bus home after school. I'm going to invite them anyway. We'll find a way to get them home. Jill's mom told us the new kids would bring down the whole class, whatever that means, and that their names would be hard to pronounce. As the Labor Day picnic came around, I overheard Jane's mom tell mine that Jane was on a waiting list for Catholic school, but her family wasn't Catholic. So later my mom explained that Black kids were not going to that school and that the parents thought they'd be more challenged. On the first day of school, I did not wait for the bell. I got there early to watch the buses pull up. There was 2 of them, and we had to stand back on the grass while the principal talked to the people coming off the bus, and I started counting. I got to 17 of them, and then I lost track because I was looking so hard at all the braids on the girls. Like, did that hurt to put them in? They were so beautiful, like works of art. Could my hair do that? Did they get up early to make it look so pretty? And then I just didn't even count anymore. But after a while, I figured there was probably about 50. And remember, I'm not very good at math. So I figured out, okay, I think it's about 5 kids in each class. So the principal let them go in early so that they could find their seats. And then when we came into the classroom, I looked around and there were 5. So I was right. And I saw my name tag and sat down and looked at the one next to me with the Black girl. And it was Velma. My sister's name's Velma. I knew that one. That's not a hard name to pronounce. I'd said it all my life. I tried not to stare at her. But she did have these super long legs and her knees brushed the bottom of her desk. I felt so bad for them. Like they were just in this entirely new place that they'd never been. And I just wanted to say, we welcome you. But I sat quiet. As recess came closer, I stood in the recess line at the edge of the classroom and stood next to her. And I said, you want to play Simon Says? And she just kind of shrugged. I thought, oh, does she not know how? Does she not know any of the rules? Should I tell them to her? And eventually I did start talking about my sister and how her name was Velma. And I told her all these recess rules and all the games we play. And I could hear my mom's voice in my head, Kendra, don't talk everyone's ear off. But as the recess got going the next few days, she learned all the games really fast. She knew a little bit of all of them. She was so tall and her legs were so long that she was fast at all of the games. She always wore these colored tights and a dress. And I always wore pants and I only talked fast. I didn't run fast. But we still started gluing to each other at recess times. She was like a gazelle in my mind. Diary entry, September 18th, 1967. Velma sits with her bus friends at lunch. I don't like that. But we are library helpers now. If you finish your daily math, do all of your homework, and have good behavior cards on the board, you get to go to library before lunch and sort and shelve. We would do this 2 times a week. And I looked forward to it because we would whisper together and get this whole code going between us, conversing about books and favorite characters. She could get to the top shelf with her tall legs. And she said, the library seems so huge. I never thought of it as being that big. So I asked her if she'd ever been to the one in Chicago. And she, again, just shrugged. Sometimes I just asked her too many questions. I asked about braids, and she sort of explained it to me, but I didn't understand. And I asked, did she have a bicycle? And what were her favorite stuffed animals? And what swimming pool did she take lessons at, what summer vacation camp she went to, but she didn't always answer. But she had her own questions, like, what are all those uniforms that the girls wear? So I got to tell her all about brownies and Girl Scouts and how we did crafts and litter pickup and Chinese jump rope. And she was real curious and wanted to come. So I went to the principal. And at first he said, well, we can't have any of them come to Girl Scouts because they can't get home on the bus then. But I stuck it out and kept asking him, and he asked some of the parents to volunteer to drive them home after brownies or Girl Scouts. So the first time that Velma came with 3 other Black girls, we made suet bird feeders for the old folks home. And then we got to go to my house, and we walked in the snow with our fingers still filled with suet. She walked faster than me, of course, but she got to meet my sister, Velma, meet Velma. It was very fun. And then we played in my big walk-in closet. She'd never been in one of those before. It had a slanted ceiling. And that's where I played with my stuffed animals. And she looked at all of the antiques and said she'd never seen antiques in a house. But she was fearless on the tire swing. So we had a good day that day, and my dad got home from teaching and took her back home. And I just felt like we were getting a little closer, even though we had so much about us that was different. First of all, I couldn't go to her house. She said her mom wouldn't let her. She was a mean runner, a jump roper, a suet maker, a bookshelver, a math story problem solver. And I hated math, loved ballet, and I was faster at talking than running. But we both loved books and reading. Fast forward, diary entry, April 5th, 1968. Velma was not at school again today. We had an assembly. And I kept trying to pronounce the word assassination. Our principal showed us pictures of the protests and of Martin Luther King doing speeches. And then after spring break, she finally came back to school. And she wasn't very talkative. I asked all my questions, and she only would say that her parents watched the news and that she had family in the Chicago protests. She was quieter, and we weren't even library buddies anymore because she didn't do her daily math and all of her homework, and brownies was over for the year, and I was scared she'd never talk to me again. So she still played with me at recess, but she didn't really glue herself to my side. In the summer, in dance class, I brought her inside of my body, like I could imagine being her gazelle self and leaping. In 4th grade and 5th grade, I still saw her, but we just weren't glue anymore. I still miss her today. And as a child, I thought my principal was right. All we had to do was be kind and welcoming. Now I know that's merely a drop in the ocean of combating racism. Thank you.
Kendra, thank you so much for your story. We appreciate Kendra's story because, well, it is a nuanced and careful story, and it is one that I believe many of us can relate to. I know, Kendra, it took a lot to tell today, but that you've also poured yourself into this story, and we really appreciate you working with the Storytellers Project and being willing to share it.
Thanks, Megan.
Oh, gosh, yeah. One of the things that I want to highlight about Kendra's story is how thoughtful she is about the things we believe as children that, of course, as adults, we find out later are not true. And We share that story with you today, especially in the spirit that, inspired by maybe the selves we were as children, we can work collectively to make those things true. It is a thought. Thank you, Kendra, for giving us that thought. Okay, our next storyteller is John B. Johnson, and we are excited to have him up. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you, Kendra, for giving us that perspective. I'm going to change up the energy. I did it, y'all. It's May 4th, 2012, and I just graduated college with 2 master's degrees. 16 years of education, and I still had no idea what I was going to do next. Should I move back home, save some money, get some free meals, get on my feet? Should I move back home? Maybe stay in school, get another degree? I really wanted to milk the recession. Could you blame me? Or should I keep looking for jobs? What's ironic is I had 2 master's degrees, but I didn't have enough experience to serve and wait tables. But there was this other option that I want to say scared me to death. I could move 3,000 miles away from Cleveland, Ohio to the desert. Literally. I could move to Phoenix, Arizona for a commission-based B2B sales job, or better known as door-to-door sales in 120-degree heat. Why would I do that? A beautiful cacti there, and not a good enough reason, right? Okay. If I'm being honest, there was a better reason. There was a girl. Her name was Sarah Marie. I know. Why else would somebody move across the country to the desert, people? Of course it was a girl. I haven't stopped thinking about her since sophomore year. Separate from all of these incredible options, I was a millennial. I had so many incredible options when I graduated. There was this pressure that was building inside of me that I had no idea what it was. This pressure that I needed to get out of Cleveland. This pressure that I needed more. This pressure that I needed to grow up and be a man. Where was it coming from? To give you context, no one in my family had ever left Cleveland. As a matter of fact, they all live within 30 minutes drive of where they were born. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but at the time, it made me sick to my stomach to think that I would never leave Cleveland. And as the youngest in my family, I was privileged with things my older brother and my sisters were not. I got to study architecture abroad in Florence, Italy, as I traveled Europe. I got to present my master's thesis project to world-renowned universities in the UAE. So forgive me if Lake Erie no longer did it for me. I swam in the Dead Sea or in the canals of Venice. I felt like I needed more than Cleveland was able to give me. So as the youngest, I was also privileged with the opportunity to learn from my family's experiences. You see, my mom raised my 2 older sisters, my brother and I, on her own. Their father died when they were young, and I never knew my father, like many other Black people in America. My brother went to prison when he was 17, and I was 10 at the time. And on top of that, my 2 older sisters had children with men who were not ready to be the father that my nieces and nephews deserved. So I guess you can say that pressure I was feeling was created by this desire to be a better man than I ever knew, whatever that meant. This was my time to do that. So after all of that context, I bet you can guess what I did. Yep. I went to the desert. In true millennial fashion, I gave my family 2 weeks notice that I was leaving. There was no way I was going to give them enough time to question me or try to convince me to stay. I packed up my Toyota Corolla, my mountain bike, and a $900 credit card, and I left for that 3,000-mile road trip alone. Now, before you judge me on the 2 weeks notice, if you know anything about the Midwest, It's hard to leave because there's just so much love. You feel an obligation to stay and make it better. And Sarah inspired me when she left to go to grad school at ASU. And dare I say it, I'm going to say it. LeBron inspired me when he left for Miami. Yep, I was out like LeBron James. I was taking my talents to the desert. And little did I know this emotional roller coaster I was about to board was going to challenge my every way of thinking. So when I packed up my car and waved goodbye to my mom, my sisters, and my nieces and nephews, I was filled with excitement and a little dash of nerves, in a good way, heavy feeling in a good way. Just like when you click your way up that first hill of a roller coaster, So as they vanished in my rear view mirror, I was free, y'all. I was free, falling, driving down I-71. I saw my whole life ahead of me. I was on my way, filled with so much hope and wonder. I could not help but scream every word of my playlist out the window, like as if the truck drivers wanted to hear me singing. So for the first 4 hours, I was on cloud nine, smiling from ear to ear, just like you see me smiling right now. And as I passed the Ohio border, "Welcome to Indiana," the sign read. And as I read that sign, I remember feeling like I was falling from that roller coaster. When all of your insides move, strong emotions just started to set in. As I talked to myself, what was I doing? I can't just leave them. I was the only person they had. I finally started thinking about something other than myself, and I became sick, filled with fear, regret, shame, guilt, sadness, and every other terrible emotion. I felt small. I felt and I realized for the first time that I was abandoning my family. And when I realized this, I had to pull off the highway because I was crying so hard. "Get it together, John. It's only been 4 hours." My ego started to chime in. I remember calling my big sister, sobbing. Of course, she thought I was in an accident or something terrible because it was 4 hours since I left. "What's wrong, John?" she asked. "I left you. I was the only man in your lives, and I left. I'm so sorry. I love you so much, and I did not mean for it to be this way." She waited for me to stop sobbing and said words that I'll never forget. "John, what are you talking about? You're not a man." Not minding the dagger that she stuck right through my ego, she continued, "This is exactly why you should be going away. To find the man we all knew you would become one day. You are not responsible for the men who hurt us, so don't carry that, John. Go and live your life and make us proud. We will be just fine." And with those words, the roller coaster ride was over. An overwhelming sense of peace and a heavy dose of humility just consumed me. And that conversation with my sister on the side of the road, and God knows where, Indiana, just changed my life forever. And that was the moment I realized I was growing up. Up until then, I was still acting like a boy, trying to be a man, because that's what I thought I needed to be. I felt like I needed to be strong when my brother went to prison. I felt like I needed to be strong when I found out my mother was in an abusive relationship. I had to be strong when other men hurt the women and children I loved the most. That day, on the side of that road, a lot of that pressure was released. And I was finally free to go and be the man I was destined to be, not the man I needed to be. I was free to grow up. My decision to leave Cleveland back in 2012, it led me to so many more roller coaster rides just like that have made me the man I am today. Today, I'm married to that girl I went to the desert for. Thank God. And I became the first person in my family to get married. And this year, Sarah and I will celebrate our 5-year anniversary. 9 years later, Sarah and I will be moving back to Cleveland to build our home, to grow our family, and to finally put in some roots. But if I did not give my family that 2 weeks notice before I moved to the desert, growing up could have looked very different for me. It was necessary, but it was never easy. And the harder it was for me, the more wisdom I gained. So I thank God every single day for giving me the courage to leave, because I would not be returning home to my family, to my friends, to my city, the man I am today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. This is such a beautiful and moving story, and such like a deep, thoughtful story about leaving home and going home. I hope you tell it again. I deeply appreciate your story and your thoughtfulness. And
Thank you, babe.
congratulations on your anniversary and your marriage. Like, there's a lot of wins here, you know? Like, I was like, oh,
Oh, I'm blessed.
everything's
I'm blessed.
well for John. Yeah, you really are. But it is a blessing into it itself to realize it. So thank you so much for that. Also, I'm excited you're moving back to Cleveland. As a fellow Midwesterner, I think Cleveland's great.
I
Right?
can't wait. So much to learn and so much to do.
Yeah, and their art museum is incredible. So hats off to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Pretty great. And I'm saying this as I'm from a different part of the Midwest. I grew up on Lake Michigan. Cleveland, you guys know, is a different lake. We're not going to talk about it. But I'm really proud. My twin sister was part of Cuyahoga Valley National Park there. And anyway, shout out to Cleveland. With that, I want to point out, when you guys were little, probably everyone watching got a lot of vaccines. It's just a huge part of growing up. So many little pokes in your feet and sometimes in your hips and your thighs. With that, we have another message from Humana about getting vaccinated.
I'm very optimistic about what the ultimate impact of these vaccines will be. When you get a certain percentage of the population vaccinated, we can create an umbrella of herd immunity literally over the entire country. That will take several months to occur, but I feel confident that if we get a substantial proportion of the population vaccinated, that we can actually end this epidemic as we know it in this country.
The vaccine is important, and it's a protective measure. Wearing a mask is important also. Physical distancing of 6 feet is important.
The vaccine is a huge step forward, but it is not a silver bullet. And so after people receive the vaccine, we still need to do the simple things that we know work.
Thank you so much to Humana for sponsoring that message and bringing to us today. Also, so excited to see Anthony Fauci. We have not approached him to be part of the Storytellers project, but my heart has big hopes for next year. He's very busy right now. He probably doesn't have time to work on a story. I want to give a little shout out to another supporter of the project. Fairy Tale Brownies has been with us since 2014, and we are so thankful to them. Their whole energy is about spreading joy, and they know, right? Like, it has been a hard year, and this year itself has been like a hard first quarter for a lot of us. But Fairy Tale Brownies believes that we communicate who we are, right, through stories, and they communicate some of who they are through literally chocolate and sugar and butter. Their big idea is that they want to help you tell the people you care about, whether that's a business meeting, a birth, a congratulations, maybe it's just a hello from across the country. They want to help you express that through literally specially baked goodness. And it's made right here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm in Phoenix. So we really appreciate Fairy Tale Brownie supporting this show. They sent each one of our storytellers tonight a little box of brownies as a way to say, thank you for telling your stories to bring Americans closer together. And so this is our chance to say, thank you to Fairy Tale Brownies for supporting the project. If you come to one of our shows next year, God willing, in the outside, in real places, you will get a Fairy Tale Brownies brownie if you are a subscriber to any of our USA Today Network newsrooms. And so while we can't offer you those right now for being a viewer, we can offer you a 15% discount with code STORY15, as you guys are seeing at the bottom of the screen. And so we encourage you, even, if you can't always we can't always guarantee you like a sweet, easy ending at the end of all of our stories. We can tell you, you can make sure that all of your stories have sweet and delicious endings if you visit brownies.com. So thanks so much to Fairy Tale Brownies for supporting our storytellers and this show. And we hope that you can show them a little love yourself. Awesome. With that, and it's not cheesy, I don't have any brownies in front of me right now. I'm not going to eat them in front of you, but I've had them a lot and they are incredible. So thank you so much to Fairy Tale Brownies for supporting the show. With that, I want to bring up Brittany Kay. She's coming to us also from her house in Phoenix, and she's going to tell us a story about growing up in the desert. Take it away, Brittany.
Hi, I grew up in a small rural town in the desert. Now, you may not associate fishing with the desert, but it was my favorite pastime. Not exactly for the fishing, but for the alone time with my dad. You see, we'd wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning, load up his old Ford pickup truck, grab the gear, grab the dog, and spend hours out in the warm Arizona sun on the middle of the lake in the small aluminum boat. Some of my earliest memories from childhood, though, are sitting in the water heater closet when I was small enough to fit inside of a water heater closet, listening to my parents fight. I would sneak into the hallway and gently close the door, listening and entranced, because my parents did not just fight. They would rage, scream, hit, break things. After each incident, they would swear they were going to get a divorce. And after each incident, the silence and the disconnect were more tangible than the broken glassware my mom would sweep up. In those moments, our home was its own desert, completely barren and lacking in any love. Over time, I began to counsel my mom. I would set my feelings tidily aside, and I would say things like, "That's okay, Mom. You just have to choose yourself," or "Things will get better," or "Maybe it is time to leave. You can't do this forever." I grew up very young, but I sort of plateaued there because adults had this annoying habit of telling me, statistically, you're likely to end up in a relationship like your parents. So I swore off love. I was never going to fall in love. But in my 20s, I started to date and met someone who I had dated for long enough that I confused time spent with love. Mind you, I did go in 1 foot out the door, ready to leave at any time. So I'm 29. I'm living with my boyfriend and another couple. And I come home one day and my boyfriend is reading in the chair. "Hi," I greeted him. He says nothing, continues to read his book, slowly turns a page, doesn't even acknowledge me. Hurt, I went into the kitchen to make some dinner, and about 15 minutes later, I watched him slowly put a bookmark in his book, close the book, set it down on the table, and walk into the kitchen. I go to kiss him to say hello, and he stretches his full 6'3" height so that I can't reach his face. I'm only 5'4". And as he stretched away from my affection, I looked around a dirty kitchen that I was going to have to clean. Dirty smoothie glasses that had been left in my roommate's cars for weeks on end littered the kitchen counter. My carpets were stained from other people's pets. May have been my home, but the space was not mine. At the same time, I was in massage school, and one day a teacher asked us to imagine the space between our atoms during a guided meditation. She said to imagine the feeling of love and to fill the vast spaces inside of your body with that love. I felt nothing. I scrimped and I scraped and I looked and I thought of every person I've ever known, and I judged myself for not being able to conjure the feeling of love. And then I remembered how Phoenix smells after a rain. I remembered my dog, who is my own personal desert because she's from the reservation. The feeling of laying out on the warm red rocks in Sedona with a lizard crawling by as the sun warms your back. And I thought of those days fishing with my dad. I felt the power of my home, and I felt love inside of me for the first time. So I went home, and I kicked out my boyfriend and my roommates. Mind you, he did live with me for free for 6 weeks while I figured out how to really move on and reclaim my sovereignty. So one morning, after crying myself to sleep the night before, my ex is in the spare room upstairs. I groggily come into the kitchen and see that a text message had come in from an old boyfriend. Hey, how are you? I'm going through a breakup. Interesting timing. Well, I've always thought about marrying you, he admitted. My insides lit up with the full color of desert bloom. I had never experienced love for someone that magical. And we spent 2 years talking on and off, and he would come into my life for 2 weeks at a time saying things like, let's buy a sailboat and sail the world together. A dream of mine. Or, Britt, let's run away and start a family. And a family band. Also a dream of mine. So in February of 2020, I flew out to Brooklyn to go see him. I'm not ready, he admitted to me. And so we called it off. I cried. I bawled the entire plane ride home. Longest 5.5 hours of my life. And if we're being honest, it longest 5.5 hours of this person's life too. Sorry. So during quarantine, all the love that had surfaced with his I love you had nowhere to go. I was holding love in my hands with no one to give it to. And I thought back to that meditation, and I poured it inside myself. He gave me the greatest gift. Not his love, but a vision of myself through his eyes. You inspired me when you became a lawyer, he told me. I love the way you make plans and make things happen for yourself. And I did become a lawyer. I did pass the bar. And I finished the character in fitness, which is a real feat when you have to declare every place you've ever lived. And I had 12 addresses going back 10 years. Thank you, Amazon, for keeping meticulous track of every place I've ever received a package. Very helpful. This man planted a seed, an idea inside of me. The flower he gave me blossomed, and I grew into a woman I have always wanted to be. A woman who loves and honors herself first. A woman who carries my home with me wherever I go, and all it took was a seed. And a global pandemic where I couldn't go out or date or rely on any of my normal coping mechanisms. And some tears, a lot of tears, to water that seed. See, I let the love grow, but I didn't stop myself from feeling the fear, the anger, the rejection, and the loss. I dug around my insides. I was turning up everything I could find, feeling into everything I could find so I could bring it to the surface and get rid of it. And the more I felt deeply inside my feelings, the more I saw 3 decades of choices that resulted from loving myself the way I had been taught to love. I crawled into my depths and saw the fear of things that bring me joy because I didn't think that I deserved them. I saw a life that I didn't want, and so I grew a garden instead. I still live in the desert, but the body I live in is more alive than ever. Every day, I cultivate a life that's safe for that little girl hiding in the closet, listening to her parents abuse one another. There are always spots that need digging and tending to. The work never stops. But once the digging is over, I can grow a garden where a desolate wasteland once existed. I'm a gardener now. Thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you so much for your story, Brittany. Oh my gosh, such heart, such metaphors, such a shout out for Amazon. You covered a lot.
They may not be perfect, but if you're taking the character and fitness, they're handy.
I so appreciate it, but really, Brittany, I so appreciate your modeling of doing the work. You've obviously done incredible work on so many levels in your life. And so often storytellers, sometimes they skip over the hard parts where the work lies. And I want to thank you on behalf of our viewers for really focusing on that, because it can feel so hard to know, but how did she do it? She looks great. Nothing bad ever happened to her. And that's what it always looks like from the outside. But your story really shows us like, well, things can happen, but we can also do the work and find our way through them.
Yeah, we all can grow.
Well, you're really sticking with this garden metaphor, Brittany.
Yeah, growing up takes going within.
It does. I so appreciate it. Well, thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time today. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. I would like to close our show with a story that also feels really relevant today. It is a story set on the other side of the planet, but it speaks to some of the same challenges many Americans are thinking about and feeling today. It's a story about us and them, but it's also just a story about being a kid. With that, Ankur, would you bring us home? Oh, hang on. We're just waiting a second. I'm sorry. I thought I was a little more ready. It's live. Sorry about that. He is getting set. Oh, his camera is on, but he's apparently not in front of it. I'm so sorry, everyone. Well, he was our last storyteller, so this is a bit much. If we were live and in person, I would just encourage you all to go to the bar, but you're home. So the bar is always next to you, perhaps. We will give him just a moment more. But if not, I guess we'll have to wrap up our show. So bear with us. We have one more message from Evan. Do you want to bring up one more message from Humana about vaccines? And we'll see how that goes. Give us just a second. Thank you.
It's actually not possible to get COVID-19 from any of these vaccines because they are not using live virus.
Short-term side effects that were observed in the leading COVID-19 vaccine trials included injection site pain and redness, fatigue, muscle aches and pains, joint pain, and headache.
When one develops these short-term symptoms after receiving the vaccine, that in fact is a sign that the vaccine is working and that your body is marshaling its defense network.
It's important to note that none of these vaccines can give you COVID-19 since they only express a protein from the virus that allows your body's immune system to generate antibodies.
Okay, well, thank you so much to Humana for that little PSA. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to welcome up all of our storytellers here, and we are going to have to wrap our show. We literally are not quite sure where Ankur went. So with that, can I welcome up everybody who is with us here this evening? Thank you, John. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Kendra. We so appreciate you guys telling your stories, bringing your hearts to us, and sharing this experience with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you, our viewers, so much for watching. We will bring you Ankur's story on another show. It is incredibly good, and I am disappointed that he's not with us tonight, but he invested in it, and we'll make sure you're able to hear it. Thank you so much for joining us.